Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above, down in spit forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. I believe that I've got the audio figured out on the program. You see, every time I switch back and forth between the downtown studio and this one, there's always things that change, and so I think that I've got it all figured out. Anyway, welcome to the program, my friends. We're back here in the home studio for the next couple of days, and there's a couple of things that are going on in this Cowboy State. It's going to be from now until probably after the legislative session, and that is the governor's budget. And as we told you yesterday on the program, 11 point whatever it is billion dollars, which interestingly enough, if you look at the numbers, the governor says that it would cost him a little over $9 billion to do the same thing that he did last year. But last time around, the budget was 11.3 or 11.4 or whatever the number was. But he's saying that it's going to cost $2 billion less than it did the previous budget session. And yet he's still asking for $11 billion. And if you read his letter, he claims that all of this is being extraordinarily conservative, that he's the most conservative governor that the United States has ever seen, and nobody could be more conservative than Mark Gordon. Well, the truth is there's nothing about Mark Gordon that is conservative. And if you pay attention to the folks that are praising him for the budget, you can see that, it's not exactly as he's painting it out to be. For example, if you go to the Cow Pie article that was printed 2 days ago, it's entitled Governor Gordon Proposes $11.13 billion 2-year budget. And in Wyoming, we budget every 2 years. So when you hear this 11 billion, whatever it is, that's for this upcoming year and the next. Now, if you'll remember correctly, during the last legislative session, we didn't have a supplemental budget because Bo Beitman and the senators killed it. And then they ridiculously claimed that they saved $1 billion. But anyway, to the piece in the cow pie, and I quote, Gordon also said so. Let's see here. Let me back up a sentence. The figure encapsulates raises for state employees. Senator Ogden Driscoll and Senate Appropriations member told the Cowboy State Daily in a Monday phone interview. Gordon also said so in a Friday preview of his budget proposal, where he said it was time to bring employees up to current pay tables and stay competitive in the market. All right. So anytime you hear one of these politicians say that, really, and what comes to your mind is that, well, these government employees, they are obviously not being paid equivalent wages to somebody in the private sector. But that's not what that means. What that means is, are we paying state employees the same rate of pay as in our neighboring states? You see, government doesn't really ever do anything with the private sector unless, of course, they're claiming that it was some sort of stupid public-private partnership, which is ridiculous. That's not the role of government anyway. But when the governor says, well, we need to bring all these people up to current pay rates, he's not talking about government employees' wages being the same as yours. He's talking about them being the same as government employees in other states. Now, listen to what Ogden Driscoll says. Quote, it's a lean budget. He, Gordon, really has brought us back a budget that is pretty clean, pretty flat, which, considering the inflation that's gone on, kudos to the governor. Pretty well done. Yeah, except that 2 years ago, the budget that left the House of Representatives was around $9 billion. And there was that was what left the House of Representatives. And then when it got over to the Senate, they added $2 billion to it, and a couple of high schools and, a whole bunch of other things that we didn't need to buy. So no, Ogden, it's not flat. And any argument to the contrary is just plain political bullcrap, which it is you. So, I mean, it just stands to reason that nothing you say is actually going to be straight, because you have to toe the line with the governor. Let's see here. There was something else in here. I mean, they talked to Augie, and let's see here. Let's go down. If you skip a couple paragraphs, here's what it says. As to the proposed boost for state employee wages, House Appropriations Chair John Baer called that, quote, interesting, especially in light of Gordon reaching the end of his two-term limited tenure. And then, of course, the cow pie has to, put their own opinion in there. Gordon may be able to remove the 2-year time limit by petitioning the Wyoming Supreme Court, however. I don't quite understand why you can call yourself a media or a journalist organization and then toe the line with with Governor Mark Gordon. I mean, it just goes to show you that and let's just talk about that one comment in the Cow Pie article, that Gordon may be able to remove the 2-term limit by petitioning the Wyoming Supreme Court. However, all right, so there was a lawsuit years ago after Wyoming passed term limits for all 5 state elected officers. And I believe it was the Secretary of State that sued. Anyway, what the court ruled was that everybody except the governor, and the governor wasn't mentioned in the court's orders, didn't have to be term limited. And so nothing from what the Supreme Court said covers the governor. So for the cow pie to assert that, only the governor just has to petition the Supreme Court, and I don't know if that's how that works. I mean, I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on the radio, but seems to me that he would have to sue because that's how you get a court ruling. Anyway, the cow pie is saying that the governor's budget is extraordinarily conservative. We know it's not. He added money. Well, and when Driscoll says that, the budget's pretty flat, what he means is it's pretty well the same number that came out of the Senate 2 budget cycles ago. So I guess in that terms, it is flat. But remember, that's adding 2 high schools and adding a whole bunch of other crap that we don't need to pay for. The truth is, we spend way, way, way too much money. And there's so much stuff that is packed into the budget that we just don't, that's just not the proper role of government, like much of the Department of Health. And, and look at the education. So the Department of Health and Education take up most of Wyoming's budget. So let me just ask you this. Let's say that you're paying a teacher $100,000 a year. You're not, by the way. We don't pay teachers that much in Wyoming, but let's just assume that you are. And we pay north of $21,000 for every child that's in Wyoming schools. And so if you have a class of 20, which I would say that's a pretty fair number, maybe more, maybe less, but let's just say you have a class of 20. Well, 5 of those students would cover the salary for the teacher. Where's all the money for the other 15 kids that are in there? Because the schools don't pay for maintenance. They don't pay for building the school. They don't pay for transportation. All of those are reimbursed. So where's all the money? When I was down in Torrington over the weekend, I had a conversation with a Goshen County school board member, actually he was the chairman, and I asked him that very question. I said, all right, so 5 of those kids pay for the teacher. And by the way, you're not paying them that much, but we're just for the sake of argument. Where's the money for the other 15? And the school board member could not answer the question, or rather did not want to answer the question. And perhaps that's more to the point. Another piece in the cow pie this morning is that the Campbell County's nuclear solution ban on storage of high-level waste. Now, this one's interesting. I am not in favor of Wyoming being a nuclear waste storage site. I don't have a problem with nuclear power. I just don't want the waste here. Store it somewhere else. I don't care where you put it, Yucca Mountain or wherever else, but I just don't want it here. And that was my main problem with the Radiant Nuclear in Bar None, is they were going to store nuclear materials on site. And I don't care that the factory's there. I just don't want the waste there. I don't think that I want anywhere in the state of Wyoming to be a nuclear waste dump. And interestingly enough, there is no national repository of nuclear waste. Why? Because no other states want it. And it doesn't matter how many billions of dollars that the federal government offers states to store nuclear waste. None of them have taken them up on it. Why? Because it's radioactive, and it will be for the next 1,000 years. So Gillette, they have another idea. And let me just read to you the first couple paragraphs out of this piece. And I quote, "After 2 months of workshopping and revisions, the Campbell County Commission voted Tuesday to prohibit the storage of high-level nuclear waste in the county. It's a message to the world that it might want to be part of Wyoming's emerging nuclear industry, but it does not wish to become the nation's nuclear waste dump. The resolution, which evolved significantly from Commissioner Jerry Means's original September proposal to put the issue directly to voters, ultimately passed despite opposition from Commissioner Jim Ford, who argued the measure was premature and unnecessary given existing state and federal laws. Quote, "I think presently that some of what's in this resolution is based on speculation and concerns about future unknowns," Jim Ford said in a Tuesday meeting. He cited upcoming federal guidance from the Trump administration on January 18th regarding permanent nuclear waste storage solutions and Wyoming's legislative session beginning February 9th as reasons to delay action. Ford emphasized that the nuclear waste is already illegal under both federal and state law, arguing that the resolution could be boiled down to a single line that says, "We just agree with the law and think it should be followed." Well, as we know, liberal politicians in the state have a habit of changing state law when there's giant dollar numbers attached to it. And so excellent job to the Campbell County Commissioners, which I wouldn't say very often because they don't often do a great job. But anyway, good job for getting rid of nuclear waste storage. And, the article is correct. It's actually illegal under Wyoming law to store nuclear waste here. And one of the reasons that Radiant left or decided to move their facility elsewhere is it didn't appear that any sort of change in statute was coming. And I tend to agree with that. There's a number of folks in the House of Representatives that were probably not going to vote in favor of storing any nuclear waste here. So probably right on target, which is another reason why I think counties, and here's another reason why I think that the resolution in Campbell County was entirely appropriate because the government closest to the people governs best. And if the representatives, the local representatives of Campbell County, have decided that they don't want any sort of nuclear waste in their county, I mean, counties should pass resolutions like that. They should make decisions as to what best fits their county. That's why we elect these jokers, so that they can make those decisions. Anyway, another piece of frightening news this morning from Breitbart. Several NATO nations scrambled jets as Russian airstrike kills at least 20 children. And I quote, this is on the top page of Breitbart right now. The air forces of several NATO states were scrambled overnight to protect the airspace of the alliance along its eastern border as Russia launched one of its deadliest deadliest airstrikes against Ukraine's western region of the war thus far. Polish, Romanian, German, Spanish, Norwegian, and Dutch fighter jets were scrambled in two deployments in airspace bordering Ukraine over Poland and Romania, and the Russian armed forces hammered western Ukraine. According to Kyiv, Russia launched 476 drones, 47 cruise missiles, and one ballistic missile in strikes across the country, but particularly on western cities of Ternopil and Lviv. At least 20 people have been found dead in Ternopil, which is approximately 225 miles west of the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv and 110 miles short of the Polish border. Of the killed, at least 2 are children, and a further 66 were wounded, including 16 children in the strike, which badly damaged 2 apartment blocks. Ukraine said it scrambled its own Western-built fighter jets, including the U.S.-made F-16s and French Mirage 2000 jets, to shoot down Russian missiles. In all, Kyiv said 41 cruise missiles were shot down, 10 of them by Western-supplied Ukraine Air Force jets. But the BBC notes that the unusually large and deadly Russian air raid came one day after Ukraine said it had used U.S.-made ATACMS missiles against targets inside Russia, the first time this had happened under the Trump presidency. So, Putin is going to claim that this is in response to that attack, that there were U.S.-made weapons that were used in strikes inside Russia. Well, I mean, it's I'm not a fan of the U.S. being involved in the Ukrainian war, but if you're Ukraine and Russia's trying to take over your country and they're striking inside Ukraine, it makes sense that you would strike inside of Russia. We would do the same thing if Russia or Canada started firing missiles into the U.S. We absolutely would fire missiles back. So, I mean, it makes sense. But the distinction here is the missiles that were used in the strike were USA made. So that's the one distinction here, and with the ferocity of the Russian attack. But it makes you wonder. Maybe Putin wasn't being all that forthcoming in his talks with President Trump. And I mean, it's Vladimir Putin, so I don't know that you can trust anything that he says. Let's see here. In an update after the defensive mission completed, they confirmed that no Russian drones or missiles were detected having entered Polish airspace. And they expressed thanks to the Royal Norwegian Airspace, Spanish Air Force, Royal Netherlands Air Force aircraft, and German Army's missile defense systems, which all helped ensure the safety in the Polish skies. So this is, as far as I know, this is the first time that NATO has actually, done anything in response to the Russian aggression. So I don't know, man. I don't like this whole Ukrainian-Russian war, and I think it's perilously close to maybe not necessarily World War III, but you never want to get involved in a proxy war. Because they escalate rather quickly, and there's really not that much of daylight in between selling weapons to Ukraine versus giving troops to them. So, I don't know. I don't want any part of it, and I don't think that any thinking person does either. Now, here's a topic that I've been wanting to talk about on the program for quite a while, but it just never seems to never seems to, get to the point where we can fit it in. But have you noticed, and maybe just me living in Sheridan is why I've noticed this so much, but we never used to have casinos in Wyoming. And then we legalized horse racing. And then those horse racing parlors kind of morphed into skill games, what are called skill games. And by the way, I talked to a lobbyist for the gaming industry last session. I said, all right, so shoot it to me straight. What are these skill games? And he said, well, to give you an example, one of them is based on historical horse races. And so if you knew the outcome of historical horse races and you were able to pick it out, then you could predict the outcome of the race. And that's where the skill comes in. And I kind of laughed and I said, who in their right mind researches old historical horse races? And he did nod and he goes, not very many people. But it does meet the definition of a skill game. For all the rest of us, well, it's nothing more than a slot machine. So the title in the cow pie is Wyoming Lawmakers Advance 5 Bills to Rein in Slot Machine-like Gaming. And I know that you've seen these. You go into, these machines are everywhere in a liquor store, and there's machines in gas stations and at the truck stop in Casper, where I usually shop or stop on my way to Cheyenne. These slot machines are just about everywhere. And here's what the Cowboy says, quote, meeting in Cheyenne on Tuesday, the Legislative Management Council advanced 5 bills aimed at reining in slot machine-like gaming in Wyoming. If the current drafts become law in the legislative session that opens February 9th, the bills would provide prosecutors more power to charge gambling crimes and strengthen penalties against against money laundering, while also giving local governments more authority to oversee simulcasting and horse racing terminals. Now, let's just be perfectly honest. The horse racing is, that's the window dressing that they put on this whole slot machine business because, horse racing legal, full-blown casino, not so much, which kind of begs the question why there's a business on Caffeine in Sheridan that looks like a straight-up casino and their sign says Lucky Sevens. Pretty much looks like a casino to me. Quote, the prevailing sentiment from the Wyoming legislature's administrative arm Tuesday was that slot machine-like gaming in Wyoming has exploded, needs more regulation, and threatens the quaint diversity of small towns. The industry players, conversely, pointed to the jobs and revenues they generate, the live horse racing events, and the HHR machine support, and the concessions they've already made. As proposed, the bills would give prosecutors clearer means of charging house-style gaming operations, but not friends who gamble together. Ban money laundering on state level by making it a felony. Bar new permit approvals for skill-based amusement game operators in establishments that sell package, but not for consumption liquor. So those are the liquor stores. Limit horse racing terminals to 3,004 per track and per permit holder. That's a reference to the HHR games being linked to requirements for having live horse racing events at in-state tracks. And then there's one more, give town and county governing boards a kill switch, the authority to deny approval of simulcasting, virtually streamed horse racing, in their counties upon a showing of good cause. This one would also let local governments designate where historic horse racing terminals could sit in permitted locations, dictate their hours of operation, and impose other reasonable restrictions on them. Let's see here. Senate President Dennis Beitman, that's his real name, by the way, is Dennis. His name is not Bo, it's Dennis. Senate President Dennis Beitman called the horse racing machine's proliferation sad. Quote, in Sheridan, our famous longtime family-run pizza joint turned into a casino, said Beitman, and that was sad. Our community members are like, man, this is getting out of control. What are you guys going to do about it? Beitman repeatedly floated the idea of putting all the machines at a live horse racing track site. In 2013, Wyoming opted to allow horse racing gaming machines on the condition that they would support the more costly investment of live horse racing. It was an attempt to revive the vibrant in-person races and the agricultural business associated with them. Multiple lawmakers acknowledged Tuesday. The goal is being met, Peter Liguri, the part owner of Wyoming Horse Racing, told the Management Council on Tuesday. Okay, well, the article goes on and on, but it's very clear, I think, if you go into any of these establishments, that this is not just horse racing, that these are full-blown casinos. And, all right, you can call them skill games if you want, but really, it's just a casino. And if you happen to have a TV that's broadcasting a horse race, then that's what qualifies it as a track event or whatever you want to call it. But the truth is, it's a casino. Now, I have heard other reports of like a poker game that was being run in Buffalo, I believe, at a liquor establishment. But the establishment wasn't running the game. It was just some friends getting together to play cards. That had to be shut down. But if you go into the other room at the same establishment, there's 3 of these slot machines along the wall. So you can allow slot machines, but evidently, a full-blown casino or a poker game is not. I mean, it points to the incongruity in Wyoming law. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, and, I'm totally not in favor of it. Well, it's a little bit early, but we're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to play you I meant to do this yesterday, but play you a video that there are still school administrators that, they don't know how many genders there are. So we'll do that when we come back. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. Back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism, coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Wednesday. I'm your illustrious host, David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the program, my friends. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for watching the show. Maybe a little bit later, we'll open up the phone lines and see if anybody's got anything on their mind. Now, I meant to do this piece yesterday. And it's a perfect example of how we think that we fixed something and then we forget about it. That we pass a bill or a law and we just all assume that everything's gone to plan and we don't need to worry about it anymore. So when Donald Trump came back into office, there was a litany of executive orders that he issued, and one of those was on this whole DEI woke nonsense bullcrap. And, he had a little spat with Harvard and a couple of other schools, and apparently they got that resolved. But the question is, have all of us stayed up on, our watching school boards, watching what schools are doing, our colleges, our universities, and our local school boards? Have we kept up the pressure? And that is, have we continued our oversight of those boards? And I would say probably not, because we as conservatives have this really bad habit of, once we get a win, we think mission accomplished, and we go sit down, and that's all that we do. That's exactly what happened during the first Trump administration. He got elected, he won, and all of us sat back and said, "All right, good job, well done. We're good. Let's go fishing." And the truth is that the job wasn't done. Okay, you got the guy elected, but what about everything else? He still needs support. And so with a lot of these policies, gambling being one of them, but another one, what universities are teaching your kids. And this one in particular is, I don't think that there's anything that government can really do except to say that we're not going to fund an institution that is, engaging in all this woke nonsense. Well, here's a piece from the New York Post, and this will just show you how much work we have to do. Michigan education officials' response to the question of how many genders are there sparks fury. This is crazy as bleep, bleep, bleepity bleep. A Michigan education official is under fire for her response to a Republican state representative asking her how many genders there are, and it went viral, as you can imagine. And I'm going to play it for you in just a second. Michigan Chief Deputy Superintendent Sue Carnell found herself between a rock and a hard place when Republican Representative Jay DeBoyer pointedly asked her how many genders exist. "How many genders are there?" DeBoyer asked Carnell, who is seen smiling in the clip and has racked up, at printing, 2.4 million views. When she didn't answer, he pressed her again. I'll just go ahead and play for you what she said, because, her answer is, kind of incredible. That anybody believes this nonsense. Here's the other thing, too, that in social studies class, children are taught, in some of these schools, there's 57 genders, when they can walk right down the hall to the biology lab and they can disprove exactly everything they just learned in the other classroom. But that's apparently where we are. Well, here is Michigan Representative DeBoyer asking this school official how many genders there are. Check this out and watch her face.
There's lots of things in this proposed guidelines that do not line up with the beliefs of parents. They do not believe it is the role of the government, which, by the way, you are, to dictate these kinds of things. Things like you said, the science of gender. How many genders are there?
Watch her face.
How many genders are there?
Different people have different beliefs on that.
Well, you can believe all you want, but science says there's two.
So the question of gender, according to this crackpot, is a question of belief. It's not a question of science. Absolutely ridiculous. This is the same thing as your truth, my truth, their truth. No, my friends, there's only one truth. Science is science, and biology. You can't create another gender out of thin air simply because you believe it. But it does expose one other thing, and let me just play this video for you again. See if you catch it, and then I'll explain it for you. Check this out one more time.
There's lots of things in this proposed guidelines that do not line up with the beliefs of parents. They do not believe it is the role of the government, which, by the way, you are, to dictate these kinds of things. Things like you said, the science of gender. How many genders are there? How many genders are there?
Different people have different beliefs on that.
Okay,
Well, you can believe all you want, but science says there's two.
Okay, so he nailed it right there at the end. But it's amazing that a school official, and she is the chief deputy superintendent, Sue Carnell. So, I mean, she's, I guess the second in command of that school district. So an education professional. And she's saying that science is dependent upon belief, which tells you that this entire thing, at least according to Carnell, that this entire thing about gender has nothing to do with science, that it is all about belief. And that, by the way, that's done on purpose, because if you can be led to believe, I know we're using that word a heck of a lot, but if you can be convinced that science is a matter of belief, well, then you can be convinced of anything, my friends, that up is down, that left is right, and that upside down and inside out and backwards. I mean, that's all the way that things are supposed to be. But that is the agenda of the left, to get you to believe things that aren't true. And it goes all the way back to where leftist ideas come from, because none of them really work in the real world. The only place that, socialism really works is in theory at a university, in a university building. But even there, the ideas really don't work. But there are people that are getting elected and that are getting hired to fill these positions that obviously believe that thing, that it's not a matter of science, that it's all about what you think and what you feel, and don't pay any attention to the truth, because evidently the truth doesn't matter when it comes to this. All right, so in the Oval Office yesterday, there were a series of pretty concerning. Well, I mean, there was at least one concerning response from Donald Trump, but he was asked about Venezuela first, and this is from the Daily Caller. And Trump won't rule out ground troops to, quote, take care of the Venezuela problem. And I quote, Trump said he won't rule out anything among his options for dealing with Venezuela when asked by a reporter about the possibility of sending in ground troops. The U.S. has an unprecedented array of military forces and assets now available in the Southern Caribbean. And last I heard, the USS Gerald Ford is in the Caribbean. The Gerald Ford is a gigantic aircraft carrier, and the entire carrier strike group is there. So there's a tremendous amount of firepower that's right off the coast of Venezuela. Trump was asked directly during an Oval Office presser on Monday. So I guess this was day before yesterday, not yesterday. Whether he is, quote, ruling out U.S. troops on the ground in Venezuela. And he said, no, I haven't ruled that out. I don't rule out anything. We just have to take care of Venezuela, Trump said in a response. They've dumped hundreds of thousands of people into our country from prisons. Now, I've got a couple of different sound bites here from that presser, and I want you to listen very closely to what Donald Trump says, because I just want to see if you're going to catch something that he's doing here. But here's the first one, Venezuela. Now, remember, we've been striking drug boats off the coast of Venezuela for weeks now. I don't know how many they've struck, but go ahead and just take a listen to this. And the reason why I pulled this off of a video, but the reason why I'm just playing the audio for you is so that you have to listen to what he said, because I think it's important. So here's the first one, Venezuela.
You suggested you've made a decision about what you want to do next about Venezuela. I understand you don't want to tip your hand. Was there anything you're ready to rule out at this point? Are you ruling out U.S. troops on the ground?
No, I don't rule out that. I don't rule out anything. We just have to take care of Venezuela. They dumped hundreds of thousands of people into our country from prisons. Nobody knows better than this young lady right here. She's done an incredible job with Tom Homan and all of your people. Yep. It's amazing. We have a tight border right now. Nobody comes in. But we had millions of people pouring through. A year ago, we had millions of people pouring through our border, and many of them came from Venezuela, including Tren de Aragua, the gang. And I guess what I'm hearing, Christy, is that's as bad a gang as there is anywhere in the world.
It's the worst. Absolutely, sure. Absolutely, they are the worst.
I mean, they're worse than
They're
MS-13.
killers. They massacre people. They cut them up into pieces and they bury them in their communities where they grew up. They're horrible people.
Now, we had a lot of them, and many of them, most of them, pretty soon, most of them are going to be out. But they sent them in like we're a dumping ground. So I'm not in love with the people running Venezuela. I love Venezuela. I love the people of Venezuela. But what they've done to this country, and I really say this, what Biden and the Democrats have done to this country can never, ever be forgotten.
You suggested Maduro wants to talk. Are you prepared to speak with him directly? Would you commit to doing that before you order strikes?
Yeah, I probably would talk to him. Yeah, I talk to everybody.
Mr. President,
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. So at the end there, and I know it's a long soundbite, but to get Donald Trump in context, you have to play the whole thing. What a lot of media outlets do is they'll just play you the little soundbite. But that doesn't always give you the context of what he said. And in over a minute, he basically said, yeah, I'll talk to Maduro before anything happens. And he's been striking drug boats. But so far, nothing inside the country. Now, a lot of that is, it's not just posturing, because there's actual, military strikes happening or strategic strikes happening on those drug boats. Now, there's another piece, and let me just make sure here. Okay, so CNN reported Monday that the president has yet to make a decision on whether to strike Venezuela directly. Trump reportedly voiced some reservations about direct military action when taking briefings on the options available to him. The White House didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. Okay, so that's Venezuela. Now, here's another one, and this one... This one is what I really want you to pay attention to. From the Daily Wire, where whatever we have to do, Trump says he's okay with striking inside Mexico to stop drugs. Yesterday was the first time I had heard about this, and it might strike you as a little bit crazy. I mean, it's and the only reason why is it's our contiguous neighbor. Canada, Mexico. And so we're able to detach ourselves from military action overseas. But it seems to be something different when the country is like right next door and we have a border with them. But let's get into the piece. And then I'm going to play you the audio that I really want you to listen to. But anyway, from the piece, quote, President Donald Trump said Monday that he's open to green-lighting strikes inside Mexico to stop drugs from crossing into the United States. Trump spoke with reporters in the Oval Office about targeting narco-terrorists in the Caribbean Sea and said he would be okay with using the same strategy to take out drug runners on land, even if they're inside Mexico. Quote, would I launch strikes in Mexico to stop drugs? It's okay with me, Trump said, whatever we have to do to stop drugs. I looked at Mexico City over the weekend, and there's some big problems there. Now, asked if he would seek Mexico's permission before launching a strike on drug traffickers inside the country, Trump said, I wouldn't answer that question. Now, let me play you the audio from that, and just listen to what he's doing here. We'll listen to it, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Here he is, Trump on Mexico.
Would I launch strikes in Mexico to stop drugs? It's okay with me. Whatever we have to do to stop drugs. Mexico is, look, I looked at Mexico City over the weekend. There's some big problems over there. If we had to, would we do there what we've done to the waterways? There's almost no drugs coming in through our waterways anymore. Isn't it down like 85%?
It is, sir.
I don't know who the 15% would be.
Yep.
It wouldn't be you.
No, that's for sure.
No, I think it's been...
Tons and tons.
You would say that's a big signal.
Absolutely.
We have almost no drugs coming in.
All right, so he starts out by responding, well, hey, it's okay with me. There's a lot of problems down there. But what he's doing right now is laying out the reasoning why strikes would absolutely be appropriate. So he's giving you the why. Why would we do this? That it's not just some random act that he, got mad because he didn't have enough Diet Coke in the Oval Office. No. What he's doing, and I guess what I'm doing here is explaining the argument. When you craft an argument, there's three parts to it. There's the claim, there's the warrant, and then there's the impact. The claim is whatever it is that you're claiming. So we should strike Mexico because of drugs. Now, the warrant is the reasoning why. Why is it that the claim is true, or what proves that we should do the first claim. So that's where he's at right now in the explanation or in the answer to that question. Let's listen a little bit more.
To our country by the sea, by, the waterways. And you know why, okay? I mean, it's pretty obvious. Would I do that on the land corridors? I would look, every boat we knock out, we save 25,000 American lives. Not to mention the destruction of families. These families are decimated forever. The mother, the father, the children, they never recover really from it. When you lose somebody like the way they live, if you lose them, but the way they die is horrible.
Is it something?
So when we knock out a boat and we save 25,000 lives, that's great. Now, do I feel the same way about the corridors that they use? We know every one of them.
So the corridors that they use are the ways that they're crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. So he did two things there. First, he gave you the quick and dirty. All right, so we're stopping these drug boats. The drug boats, every time we do that, it saves thousands of lives. And now he's switched into saying, we know where all these corridors are, and he's going to start equating the corridors with the drug boats. Just listen.
One of those corridors under major surveillance. We have nobody coming in through our southern border, but we know exactly how they get their things here, how they get the drugs here, fentanyl, cocaine. Colombia has cocaine factories where they make cocaine. Would I knock out those factories? I would be proud to do it personally. I didn't say I'm doing it, but I would be proud to do it because we're going to save millions of lives by doing it.
Would you only do it with Mexico's permission, though?
Okay, here's Mexico.
I wouldn't answer that question. I've been speaking to Mexico. They know how I stand. We're losing hundreds of thousands of people to drugs. So now we've stopped the waterways, but we know every route. We know every route. We know the addresses of every drug.
Okay, so he's spoken with Mexico. He's started to give you the why as to why this would be appropriate. And now this is the last part of that argument. This is the impact. Okay, so in every argument, you have three parts to it: the claim, the warrant, and the impact. The warrant is the why, and the impact is why do we care, or why should Mexico care? That's what he's about to do. Now, listen close.
Lord, we know their address. We know their front door. We know everything about every one of them. They're killing our people. That's like a war.
Okay, that's a threat right there, right? That is the impact to those folks in Mexico. We know the address. We know we know where they are. We know the door that they're behind. So he's giving the impact to Mexico, saying, we know all of this, and all we have to do is push a button. Why don't you keep talking? Why don't you do what you're supposed to do? All right, let's finish this up. I know it's a long soundbite, but let's finish with the end of it.
Would I do it? I'd be proud to. I'd probably go into Congress and say, hey, and you know what? The Democrats and the Republicans would both agree, unless they're crazy. And they are a little crazy on the Democrat side. But we have lost hundreds of thousands of people a year, death. And that's not talking about family destruction, that's talking about that. And much of it comes through Mexico. So let me just put it this way. I am not happy with Mexico, okay?
That, my friends, was the art of the deal. So he laid out what he wants the drugs to stop, what he's done, what he's doing, what he may do with other countries. And then the question of Mexico comes around. And so what are you going to do there, Mr. President? And then he lays out the magnitude of the problem, the harms of the problem, if you will. And then he gives you the warrant. Okay, why do we have to do this? Well, because you're killing thousands of Americans. And the last part of it is both the impact to Mexico and the impact to the U.S. And, if you've read The Art of the Deal, he always gives you a reason why you should listen to him. And that reason is we know the address. We know where these people are at. We know which door they're behind. All we have to do is push a button. Oh, and by the way, Mexico, I'm not very happy with you. That soundbite right there is pure 100% Art of the Deal. And, it's if you don't listen to it, if you don't take things in context like this, this piece here just says, whatever we have to do, Trump says he's okay with striking Mexico. But that's not the whole story. And you have to listen to what he said to understand what he's getting at. Now, the piece ends, let's see here. It ends this way. The Trump administration says that at least 85% of drug trafficking through waterways has been stopped following the narco-terrorist strikes. But most illegal drugs are snuck into the United States on land, coming in through ports of entry. Most fentanyl trafficked into the U.S. comes from Mexico or China and is driven across the U.S. southern border in passenger vehicles, according to the GAO. Mexico has said it would not approve U.S. military operations on its soil. Okay, so Mexico's not going to do anything about it, but we're just supposed to let tons of this fentanyl come into the country and kill thousands of our people. I mean, that's where we're at in the negotiation. And so when the president says, hey, I'm not happy with what's going on across our southern border, and, we know everything about you. And you remember the story of the Afghan terrorist that Trump tells all the time? And he says, I just gave him a picture of his house. Now, why did he do that? Well, it's the very same reason why he says, hey, we know where these people are at. We know what the address is. We know what door it is. And this is classic Trump right here. And I don't think that you should, if you're Mexico, you shouldn't discount what he's saying, because if we know anything about Donald Trump, he never really says anything unless he's serious about it. Now, things can go one way or another, but the president really he doesn't go there unless he's willing to do it. And, if you read The Art of the Deal, one of the big parts of it is be willing to walk away. Whatever deal it is, you have to be willing to walk away if you're going to be successful. And that's very similar here, except we're dealing with foreign policy. We're not doing a deal for a big building. But it's a very similar concept that you have to be willing to walk away. Or in other words, there has to be options in the negotiation that you're willing to give up or that you're willing to act on, so that the person you're negotiating with knows that you're serious. And that's one of the reasons why the Democrats failed in the government shutdown, because they only had two options. Option A, shut down the government. Option B, get what they want. And there was no other off-ramp. There was no way that they could walk away and still win. And that's why, President Trump is successful where other presidents are not, because he understands the art of negotiation. He's probably been in thousands of business deals. He's probably sat across a table from, countless people and done the very same thing. And, many times he's probably known, hey, I can make money with this. I can make this deal work, but it's not exactly what I want. So the answer is no. And you have to be able to do that. And that's one of the reasons why, Trump is so effective. It's one of the reasons why he resonates with conservatives across the country, because that's how we have to run, our entire lives. If there's a deal that doesn't benefit our families, you can't be desperate about it if you want to be successful. You have to be willing to walk away from it. And, I'll give you a great example. So before Christine and I built the salon, or Dad and I built the salon for Christine. But anyway, we looked at a lot of places, and one of them was great. Great location. Parking kind of stunk, but the location was perfect. The building was great. We could have turned it into a salon pretty easily. But and we probably had the backing to be able to pull off the financing for it. But they wouldn't budge on the price. And so we just said, nope, sorry, not doing it. The numbers don't work. See you later. So that's why President Trump is successful in a lot of this. So yesterday on the show, I played you a little bit of video from Shifty Adam Schiff, the bull shiffer in chief. And it's, he did an interview with the, let's see here, where was it? The Texas Tribune Festival. And he was mocking Republicans, and I've got another soundbite from him, but this is from the Daily Wire. Schiff claims that Biden's DOJ couldn't have been weaponized because, Merrick Garland wasn't partisan. All right, so this is absolute lunacy. And I quote, Senator Adam Schiff claimed that the Department of Justice under former President Joe Biden could not possibly have been weaponized because Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland was not particularly partisan actor. Now, yesterday it was, going after presidents because of politics. That's a bad thing, and we shouldn't do that. But that's exactly what Adam Schiff did, and that's why I described it as a pot meat kettle. I don't the pot or the kettle, or are we, are both black? I don't know. But with Adam Schiff, nothing is ever true. He's the guy that stood up in front of countless video cameras and swore up and down that he had evidence of the Russia collusion. I have rock solid evidence that nobody's ever had better evidence. It's tremendous. The evidence I have is tremendous. Everybody says so. And, he went on and on and on, lied for months on end. And he never produced any of that irrefutable evidence. So here he is saying, well, there's no reason, there's no possible way that the DOJ could be corrupt under Joe Biden because the guy heading it, well, he's not partisan at all. Check this out, man. This is crazy.
I listen in the Judiciary Committee to a lot of my colleagues across the aisle rail with just the most righteous indignation about the horrible weaponization of the Justice Department under that well-known partisan Merrick Garland. And it is so fanciful as to be absurd, but they speak it with what appears to be total conviction. And I don't know, maybe they're better actors than they used to be, or maybe they've so internalized the talking points that they persuaded themselves.
Okay, so there's no possible way that Merrick Garland's Department of Justice could be at all politicized, that there's no way that you could, without any reason whatsoever, raid Donald Trump's home and claim that you're doing it for the exact same thing that every single president before him had done, because the president can declassify anything he wants just by thinking of it. I can take pretty much anything he wants from the White House, unless, of course, it's of some historical value that the National Archives wants. But even so, after every president leaves office, there's a back and forth between the National Archives and their administration, because the president is going to create a presidential library. And, so there's this back and forth. But the president can declassify anything he wants. Now, the difference between what Trump did and Joe Biden is Joe Biden took documents, classified documents, when he wasn't the president, when he was vice president, and when he was a senator. And by the way, only the president can declassify documents. But all of this happened under Merrick Garland. What happened with, all of the prosecutions of Donald Trump? What about all of the prosecutions of Trump's allies, of people who were in his administration? How about all the folks that weren't prosecuted? Comey and, Comey's being prosecuted now, but Comey and Clapper and Brennan, who clearly violated the law, but nothing ever happened to them. What about those folks? But, Merrick Garland, he could have never been, politicized. Schiff also raised eyebrows with other comments that he made at the Tribune Festival, particularly when he argued that lawmakers should not destroy presidents or make them unsuccessful simply because it was good politics. Quote, that attitude, well, you know what? I've got that video from yesterday. Let me just go ahead and play that for you, since it goes along with what we're talking about. Let's see here. Adam Schiff. Here we go. Here's the one I played you from yesterday.
That attitude that if you can make a president or a party unsuccessful, no matter what damage it might do to the country, because it's good politics, we have to get past that ruinous idea. We have to figure out a way to stop viewing each other as our enemy.
Oh, really?
And that solution will come when we figure out how to be better consumers of information again, how to determine what's true and what's not true, how to stop rewarding advertising behemoths for dividing us the way they did.
Notice the word salad that's happening because he just realized what he said. We can't go after people just because it's good politics. Absolutely absurd, my friends. Well, we're going to go ahead and take another break. And when we come back, there is an amazing interview from Hunter Biden. It's been a while since we've heard from old Hunter. And this one, my friends, it is absolutely astounding. So we're going to do that when we come back. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, David Iverson. I'm almost omnipresent, my friends. You can watch the Cowboy State Politics Live program on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. And, of course, you can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast on, well, pretty much anywhere. There's some outlets I'm on that I didn't even know that they exist, to tell you the truth. But any of the ones, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, you name it, you can find Cowboy State Politics there. And by the way, don't miss the Cowboy State Politics podcast this morning, which will be broadcast, I'm going to say probably about noon. Every Wednesday it comes out a little bit later because I've got to do this program. But anyway, so don't miss the podcast or Cowboy State Politics Live. Now, this morning on Glenn Woods, Reed Reisner was on there, and he actually took credit for getting that mechanic over in, I think the mechanic was in Cheyenne, but he's the guy that went to prison for deleting all of the emissions controls out of vehicle. So evidently, it was Reed Reisner that pulled it off. Yeah, he was the one that did it. Except, of course, that it was probably Senator Lummis and Representative Hageman and Senator Barrasso. And several people in the administration that got that pardon going. It was not Reed Reisner. Or at the very least, he didn't do it by himself. But, this is just another example of politicians claiming to do stuff that, well, they just didn't do. And by the way, it came out this summer that old Reisner has a political action committee or a fundraising committee so he can run for governor. And I'm sure that you've seen his ads everywhere. So, I mean, he's planning something. It's far more than just him trying to buy TikTok or whatever the heck he was trying to do. Anyway, so I mentioned before the break that there is an incredible interview with Hunter Biden. Now, we all know that Hunter Biden is not the fountain of political knowledge that he claims to be. And it is Hunter Biden, and he has a lifetime of drug addiction and drug and alcohol, smoking crack with prostitutes and recording all of it. So he's clearly not, clearly not somebody that we should, I don't know, in any way pay attention to. But he said some stuff during this interview that I'll tell you, my friends, we cannot let it go. From the Blaze, quote, "I'm going to get myself in trouble here, but Democrats need to get to the bottom faster." Now, this was on a podcast that I've never heard of, the Wide Awake podcast with Joshua Rubin. And I played some of this for you yesterday, but I didn't get into this part. So let me just, let's see here. Let me just find out where that was. Here we go. So this is the piece I played for you yesterday, that Trump isn't Hitler, but he's really, really terrible. And so listen to this, and then we'll go into the second part of this. So check this out.
It's no longer a cult. This is a movement. It is it is the same thing that we sat as students of history and wondered, like I think everybody does, is how did the German people allow that to happen? Mm-hmm. How did they allow it to happen? Here's how it happens. And I'm not saying that there is a Holocaust. And by the way, I'm not saying that Donald Trump is Hitler. Because
no.
Hitler had an ideology. Okay?
He's actually worse than Hitler.
Plan.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is purely corrupt. Donald Trump is a narcissistic sociopath that only cares about one thing, and that's Donald Trump. And he is a clown in that respect.
And he is a clown in that respect. So, in other words, I'm not saying that Donald Trump is Hitler, but what I am saying is he's worse than Hitler because, Hitler had a plan. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, there's no end to what these folks will say. But actually calling for violence, that might be something that's a little bit different. Let me just read you a little bit of the piece, and then I've got I think the video I've got is pretty long, so we're going to do another stop and start with that one. But just listen to this. Quote, Hunter Biden emphasized, and by the way, the guy doing the interview, Hunter Biden's saying some crazy stuff, and he's like, whatever. Hunter Biden emphasized in a recent interview that his allies on the leaderless left should not tone down their extreme rhetoric in the wake of the Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk's assassination, but rather ramp it up against the MAGA movement. Now, before he said that, and I didn't grab that part of the video for this morning, but Hunter Biden goes on a long tirade about how terrible Charlie Kirk is. But after Biden suggested to Wide Awake podcast host Joshua Rubin that Kirk was a representative of hate and should not posthumously be honored, there we go. Having trouble with words this morning. The former president's son was asked whether it was time for the left and the right to tone down their rhetoric. Quote, "We need people to see it for what it is." And then the host asks this question, quote, "Do you think the conversation should be about turning the temperature down completely on both sides?" Well, here is what the crack addict said. Listen to this, my friends. You are not, maybe you would believe it because it's Hunter Biden. But here he is. Check this out.
Do you think the conversation should be about turning the temperature down completely on both sides, right? Because from the outside, as soon as something like this happens, people are very quick to blame a side and pick a side, right? But what I haven't seen is people going, we need to look at extremism in general and tone down the temperature.
Yeah, no,
because
that's not going to happen, Josh. It's not going to happen.
From what I can
I'm
see,
gonna
it's
get
just escalating.
Yeah, I'm going to get myself in trouble for saying this. No, we need to turn the temperature up. We need to turn the temperature up, and we need people to see for it for what it is.
Okay, so there he is. No, we need to turn the temperature up. Now, this Joshua Rubin guy, he's not on our side. He's not a conservative. At the end of, the video segment that I watched, and, I didn't, it's a pretty long interview. It's, it approaches 30 minutes. But at the end of the interview, they're talking about all this political violence. And Rubin claims that 83% of all this political violence is committed by people on the right. Okay, that's just flatly not true. And actually, Rubin, he claims that, I did some research on this, and I found out that, anyway, he says what they say is, well, first, who is they? Second, what research are you doing? Because that isn't even remotely true. But he claims that, it's these people on the right that are committing all this. So he asks the question, and then Biden says, no, we need to turn the volume up. Here we go.
And what I mean by that is that I do not believe that we are going to get to the bottom until we get to the bottom. And I want to get to the bottom faster rather than through this slow kind of process of just being picked apart, a death by 1,000 cuts.
Okay, so get to the bottom. What does he mean by that? Rock bottom is what he means. Now, Hunter Biden is an addict. He's been through, been to rehab, I don't know how many times. But the only way that an addict gets out of what they're doing is to hit rock bottom, to be at the bottom, to where you have no possibility of solving this yourself. You are at rock bottom, and you got to have help to get out of it. That's what happens with an addict. I should know because I was a drunk for a long time, and it is not until you have something that you hit the bottom and there's nowhere else you can go but up. And the hope is that when you are laying at rock bottom, that you put your hands together and pray. And that's what I did. By the way, there's a lot of people on the left in Wyoming, the Democrats in the redcoats, that really wish I was still drinking, because I was far less effective. In fact, I really wasn't interested in doing a podcast at all because, whatever. But Hunter Biden, when he says, no, I want to get to the bottom faster. What he's saying is burn it all down. Burn it to the ground. Just let's get it on, is what Hunter Biden is saying. Enough of this being picked apart. Enough of this death by 1,000 cuts. He's talking about the Democrat Party, is what he's saying. Is let's get to the bottom. Let's get it on, and that way, because Hunter Biden knows that at the end of that bottom, there's only one place to go, and so that they can start rebuilding their party and they can get some of their people in power. But that is what Hunter Biden means by there. But there's a lot more. Let's continue.
Here. And when I say that we need to turn the temperature up, I am absolutely 100% not saying that it needs to be violence. But what I mean by turning the temperature up is we need to speak truth to power.
Yeah.
More people in
look at the host,
in
Bob
my
his
party,
head.
in the Democratic Party, more people in elected positions or in positions of power or the talking heads that get paid to go on MSNBC. They need to start talking about this as it is, not as a kind of conjecture about whether or not the Supreme Court and this debate, and you have people like Jake Tapper who are having hardball discussions with Donald Trump over text. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck are you talking about, man?
Sorry about that, my friends. I totally missed that F-bomb.
That's not journalism. That's, just complete and utter, abdication of your responsibility as a journalist. And so what we have are the traditional media organizations that go out there, and Abby Phillips, who I like on CNN, and she has Scott Jennings there, and she has another Republican there, and okay, what are you talking about, man? Nothing Scott Jennings says bears any resemblance to truth. Nothing. And he goes out there and he says it just.
So now he's attacking CNN. and there's a number of media outlets that are entirely on the left. ABC, always broadcasting communism, never broadcasting anything but communism. NBC, the Communist News Network, PMS, NBC, all of them are owned by the left. But what Hunter Biden is saying is that, well, they put these conservatives on there. And nothing they say is true. Well, from their point of view, and really what he means is, how dare CNN put on Scott Jennings to have a balanced discussion? Because Hunter Biden was used to the Biden administration, and frankly, the Clinton administration too, and the Obama administration, to where the media was kissing the boots of all leftist politicians, and there was no pushback. And so what he's saying is, well, we've got to get rid of all these conservative commentators. Then we got to speak truth to power. Well, it's the facts never line up with, I shouldn't say never, hardly ever line up with what the Democrats say. And so when they say speak truth to power, it means eliminate the opposing viewpoint, because that's the only way that they get their policies through. Think about the DOJ, the Merrick Garland, who is completely unimpeachable, who never could be a partisan. Yeah, according to, bullshit from Adam Schiff. So there can't be any opposition. And just think about, they prosecuted everybody they could in the Trump administration because it was a dissenting voice. And the only way that they were going to hold on to power is to completely remove any dissension. That's why they tried to put Trump in prison. Because if Trump's in prison, and by the way, there's no constitutional prohibition of somebody in prison running for president or any other office for that matter. We don't know what would happen afterwards. I suppose if you're the president, you can pardon yourself. But anyway, but they tried to put him in prison to eliminate any opposition. And that's what Hunter Biden is getting at here. Let's get to the bottom. That is, let's get to rock bottom so we can start rebuilding. And then we need to eliminate all opposition to to our point of view, and that's why he's going after Scott Jennings. And by the way, I really like Scott Jennings on CNN. I think he's like the only voice of reason on that entire network, and God bless him for putting up with all of those liberals. And, each and every day. I'm pretty sure that I would, my head would explode if I worked there. But Hunter Biden's got more to say. Listen to this.
Parrots the talking points of the administration, and everybody does that. It has done that in the past, but not when they're parroting what are verifiable lies. And then Abby Phillips will go, "That's just not true, Scott. Look what happened."
Verifiable lies. Verifiable by whom? If you pay for scientists and you say that you're going to get your money if you come up with this conclusion, that's not science, right? That's cherry picking data that proves your theory. Science is the reverse, right? You try to disprove the theory that you've made. And the hope is that you're correct and that the data will back it up. But when he says, well, no, things that are outright lies, well, that means people that oppose his viewpoint or the viewpoint of the left. We make fun of Hunter Biden a lot, but in his he's inadvertently telling the truth in this interview, telling the truth about the left anyway. And it's Hunter Biden is very different than a lot of the other political operators in that he's not skilled in nuanced discussion. A lot of politicians, they cloud what they say in all this political garbage rhetoric that could be taken both ways. That's not Hunter. He's not skilled in doing that. All right, there's more.
To regardless of the fact that it would only lasted for however many days that it did, to Jimmy Kimmel. Look what happened to what's his name, the other late night host. And you have a media ecosphere that is being gobbled up by oligarchs that are directly benefiting from their relationship and proximity to Donald Trump. They've made promises to him. They've paid him off. They've tried to settle lawsuits that are just absolutely ridiculous in order to be able to appease him. And if we continue to appease him through that process, then there's no stopping him. And by the way, I don't even know if there is any stopping him right now. The question is, what comes next?
Do you think this could be the start of something much darker. And I've
Much
never quite
darker.
seen in America a political commentator.
Okay, all right. So, do you think that this could be something of that's much darker, that we're moving some other place? So this Joshua Rubin guy, I mean, you heard him during the interview. Yeah, and you saw him bobbing his head as if everything Hunter Biden was saying were true. Absolutely ridiculous, my friends. But when Hunter Biden says, they're just outright lies. All of these media outlets are paying them. They're just paying him off. Well, from a Democrat point of view, from Hunter Biden's point of view, that the left could never be wrong. That there could never be a situation in which a media outlet was, absolutely culpable. The ABC interview with Kamala Harris, when they absolutely edited the interview to make her look smarter. But I think that was a fascinating discussion. I guess, discussion is probably not the right word, but fascinating commentary from Hunter Biden. Not the fountain of political knowledge that we want, but it's very telling when he says, no, we need to turn the volume up. Absolutely incredible, my friends. And it's, thank God that Hunter Biden is out of the White House, though the supply of cocaine inside the White House has gone down since his departure. On the other side of things is Bill Maher. Now, you've heard me talk about Bill Maher a lot. In fact, I played a little bit of his program yesterday on the program on the live show. But Bill Maher says that AOC would be a great candidate if she had some deprogramming first. You see, Bill Maher is not a wacko liberal like AOC. He's not the guy that's going to be running around with a T-shirt on that says "tax the rich" or "eat the rich" or whatever it was that AOC wore to the Met Gala, which, by the way, got her in trouble with the FEC. But anyway, Hunter Biden was sitting down with what was that guy's name? Patton Oswalt. And they're discussing AOC. Now, this is from the Daily Wire, so let me just open this up for you. Quote, comedian and HBO host Bill Maher said on a recent podcast episode that Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had the potential to be a great presidential candidate, but only if the self-described democratic socialist went through some deprogramming first. Okay, so first, I told you this yesterday on the show, that there is no such thing as democratic socialism. It's all socialism, and socialism is just one pit stop on the way to communism. Democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what to have for lunch. That's what democracy is. It's mob rule. And it's precisely why our founders didn't set up a democracy. They set up a constitutional republic because they realized what happened in history when there was democracies. And Athens, Greece was the perfect example. And it was Thomas Jefferson that said that history only tells us what bad government is. A direct slight to democracy. So anyway, when you hear the term democratic socialist, it's BS. It doesn't mean anything except just socialism. It's the only reason that word democratic is in front of it is to try to lead you to believe that it is something that it's not. So Maher made the comments on his Club Random podcast while speaking with fellow comedian Patton Oswalt, and the two immediately disagreed over how far was too far when it came to the direction of the American political left. Quote, remember when Republicans found that video of AOC dancing and drinking with her friends on the roof in college, and she looked so happy and beautiful and cool? Oswalt asked. Oh, and they think it's ending her career because they never did this. They were never comfortable to do this. And then the conversation goes towards whether AOC would be a good presidential candidate. So let me just go ahead and play that for you. It's a fascinating discussion, and you can tell from the video that both of them had been at it for a while. I mean, Maher is not his loud, energetic self. It's obvious that he's had several gin and tonics. But here you go. Watch this.
Remember when they found the damning video of AOC dancing and drinking with her friends on the roof at college? Or like, and this is a congressperson, and she looks so happy and beautiful and cool, and you're like, oh, they think this is ending her career because they never did this.
Yeah, but
they were never that comfortable to do this.
Yeah, and if she had some deprogramming, she could be such a fantastic candidate.
What do you mean deprogramming?
Well, she just doesn't, she's never going to resonate with people outside of the bubble that she lives in the very, very far left.
Well,
and that, I mean, the New York Times, of all people, the people I've been like squabbling with for the last 7, 8, 10 years, whatever, when I was all about, Democrats have gone too far left, they just put out a huge editorial basically saying exactly what I've been saying.
What, that she's too far left?
Yes, and that the only way the Democrats will ever win again, not that the Republicans are probably going to give it back, is to be more moderate. But we don't have to argue about her. I mean, she has.
If people think she's too far left, then that shows another way this country's broken right now.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily broken in that way, but it just shows how the country is not there. That is not where the country is, and if you don't,
unfortunately, okay, that's the one thing, and I hate to admit this. This country is not as mature as it thinks it is. We elected Obama, and clearly the country freaked out. And we're still living in that freak out. We are not as progressed and evolved and intelligent as we think we are because we keep freaking out about this stuff.
Yeah. Well, the left freak out too. The left freaked out about a lot of shit too.
What did they freak out about?
Gender, race, parenthood, schools.
Listen to the list.
Homelessness, crime, the border, education. Like we stopped being a scientific people. Like it's not scientific.
But the left certainly stayed scientific.
No, they didn't.
Why not?
Because they think gender that they went way too far with, that's not scientific.
Okay, so he goes on from there. But, I mean, you could tell that, Bill Maher is not buying into all of this craziness coming from the left, that the left went way too far too, and, he makes it a point to say, look, all this gender stuff, it's not scientific and it's not helpful. But I think that the point is that even Bill Maher realizes that the agenda of the American left does not resonate with voters, that it never really, really has. I mean, okay, all right. So you get some elections where a Democratic, far left Democrat gets elected. But, politics in America is a pendulum, that it's going to swing to the left. And then, people realize, oh, crap, we shouldn't have bought that. And it swings all the way back to the right. Now, the only question is how far one direction or the other is it going to go? Because in the history of politics, when things go too far to the left, that pendulum can swing all the way around, or the reverse is also true. So what you're witnessing right now is an outright rejection of everything that the Democrat Party drug us through for the last, 4 or 5 years. And even if you add in, the 4 years of the prosecution of Donald Trump, the 2 impeachments, the attempts to remove him from office, and all of the opposition, none of that is resonating with American voters. Okay, so we're approaching the midterms, and historically speaking, the party in power loses seats during the midterms. I mean, that's just American politics. Now, if we actually gain seats, it'll tell you a great deal about where the American electorate is at. Now, I think that there's some chance that a good chance, rather, that we'll gain some seats in Congress. There's a lot of really vulnerable Democrats, and there's some governorships we may win too. Though, think about this one. We just lost one of them. Glenn Youngkin was the governor of Virginia for the last few years, and now there's a radical socialist in there, and you have 2 mayors, but again, and this is amazing to me, that the Zoran Mamdani and that chick on the other left coast in Seattle, they're socialists. Well, they're communists, really, and they're only mayors. And think about all the noise that the media is making. All of the politicians that are running out to say that, oh, Mamdani is he's the way we need to go. We got to have more socialism. And then on the other left coast, that other crackpot in Seattle. But they are only mayors. We're not talking about a a statewide election for a governor. So not even a governor, nor are we talking about a U.S. representative or a U.S. senator or none of those things. We're talking about 2 mayors. In other words, this is slightly more important than Mayor Pete Buttigieg of the small town that he was mayor of. So we're not talking about a nationwide shift, though I think that the Democrat Party in total has shifted to the left. And it's away from, your mainstream Democrats. There have been a number of representatives in Congress that have switched parties. And it's not because they have become, solid conservatives. It's that they are more conservative than their left-wing counterparts. That's what's happened. And I mean, it's I've heard a lot of conservatives have this discussion. Well, if JFK were alive today, would he be a Republican or a Democrat? He would be a liberal Republican. He absolutely would be. But it's not because he would have changed his views. It's because the Democrat Party in America has changed theirs, that they have moved further to the left. It was not that long ago where if you were a politician or if you had political aspirations, that you wouldn't utter the phrase socialism because your voters would freak out and you wouldn't get elected. Well, now we're in a different spot where some of the masks are off. You've got, again, the communists on either left coast of the country. So it is more acceptable to say, yeah, I'm a socialist. But what you will see is the pendulum swing the other direction. Now, Mamdani, in his victory speech, and I need to go back and get some more sound bites of that, but it was a very different speech than any of the ones that he'd given before because he won. And now it was time to completely take the mask off and say, hey, guys, we're going full-blown communism here. And all those things I said during the campaign, well, those weren't just campaign suggestions. That was the real thing. Well, it's classic liberals like Bill Maher that are really where I think the mainstream Democrat Party, and I'm not saying party, mainstream Democrats are. Now, there are those on the fringe in every community. I've often talked about the fantastic signs that were at the No Kings protest here in Sheridan. So, yeah, are there radicals in every community? Mm-hmm. Sure. But they are not the majority. They're not in any way the majority. And so, it's I think that it is amazing when you listen to people that are just not wacko liberals like Bill Maher, come back to earth. And even the guy that he was talking to saying, oh, no, the left is scientific. Not at all, my friends. Back in a minute. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand, and one of the ways we're doing that is with the Cowboy State Politics newsletter. I'm going to send it out once a week. It's coming out tomorrow, and I want to send one to you, but I can't if I don't have your email address. So go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, and the very first thing you'll see is a pop-up that says, join our newsletter. Put your email address in there and hit submit, and it'll send me your email address. Like I say, the newsletter is going to be great. It'll give you a rundown of everything that's been happening on the show. And when I've got something great coming up, a big interview or something like that, for example, next Tuesday on the show, Josh Durrell of the Wyoming Business Council is coming back on the program. And he got some explaining to do, Lucy, about a survey that he put out. They're very pleased with it. They think that it shows Wyoming shows them the direction Wyoming citizens want them to go. But I got some questions about it, and so we're going to have Mr. Durrell back on the program. And I have no problem fencing with these folks who believe that government ought to be involved in business. I was watching the Joint Revenue Committee yesterday. And, one of the comments from Senator Ide was, I just don't think that that's the role of government. I don't think government they were talking about housing. And he says, I don't think that government needs to be involved in housing at all, in any way. That one of the reasons the prices are so high is that government is involved. And so, however you want to justify your housing scam, that's fine. Whether it's, in some way tangentially legal, whatever. He said, basically, I just don't think that's the role of government. And it's not, because government gets involved in a whole bunch of different things that it has no business sticking its nose into. But, the thing is that, hey, it's we're living at a time where, politicians get elected saying we need public-private partnerships. Well, no, we don't. If you go back to the interview I had with Mike Yin and Carly Provenza, Democrats, House Democrats, I don't know how many times I asked them, but why is that the role of government? Show me how that's the job of government, and neither one of them could answer the question because they believe that it is, but there's no way that they can prove that. Now, before the break, we were talking about how, some of these Democrats are taking the masks off, how they're saying the quiet part out loud, and that I'm just coming right out and telling you what they think. Well, one of those is Graham Plattner in Maine, and he's running for the U.S. Senate. He's the guy with the Nazi tattoo on his chest that said, well, I didn't really know what it was. It's just a military thing. And, weird that his staff reported that he knew exactly what that tattoo was. And there was that whole controversy. Well, he's created another one for himself. He's hearkening all the way back to FDR. He says, one of the real problems we're having is with the Supreme Court, that, they're just an obstacle to what we want to do, which, by the way, is totally one of the reasons why we have a Supreme Court. But anyway, from the Washington Free Beacon, and I quote, Senate candidate Graham Plattner called to stack the Supreme Court and impeach at least 2 of its sitting justices. Moves, he said, should be top priorities for Democrats should they retake the upper chamber next year. Quote, we're going to have to start treating the Supreme Court like the political action wing that it has become of conservatism, Plattner said Saturday during a Somerset County Democrats meeting in the central Maine town of Skowhegan. It is not functioning as a constitutional body. Well, it's not functioning as the constitutional body that you want, that you think the Constitution is. No doubt, Plattner, though I've not seen this anywhere, but no doubt he is one of these folks that thinks that the Constitution is a living document and that we ought to change it to do whatever we want. The remarks are Plattner's most aggressive to date when it comes to the High Court. Plattner's campaign site lists a number of left-wing policy priorities, but does not include a section of the Supreme Court. And while Plattner has criticized the court's conservative justices on X, he has not called to expand the court or impeach any of its members. Until now. Plattner did not say which Supreme Court justices he believes should be impeached, nor did he offer details on his vision of the court's expansion. His campaign did not respond to a request for comment. No kidding, because they know that this is probably a loser. FDR wasn't able to pack the court. And the reason why he wanted to do it is the court was standing in the way of all of the things that he wanted to do. And so he said, well, we're just going to add some justices and we'll fix this whole court thing. Now, the issue could emerge as a sticking point in the race and the challenge incumbent Republican Senator Susan Collins. Now, Susan Collins is an interesting one. I don't think that she's as conservative as most of us would like. But sometimes on the big ones, she votes with the Republicans. Plattner's most prominent primary opponent, Maine Governor Janet Mills, has accused the conservative majority of the Supreme Court of judicial overreach, but has not taken a position on the court. Plattner's Somerset County appearance was one of 3 Saturday campaign stops at a town hall he held 60 miles west of Bucksport. Plattner accused the Trump White House of full-blown fascism and suggested it would contest the results of the 2026 midterms. Now, here is what Plattner said, and there's no video of this, which leads me to believe that it was kind of, recorded on somebody's phone. Good job to whomever that was. But here's Graham Plattner saying we need to pack the court.
We're going to have to start treating the Supreme Court like the political action wing that it has become of conservatism. It is not functioning as a constitutional body. Impeachment. And it's very frustrating for me that I think there are Democrats in the Senate that either do not understand or don't want to understand the power they actually have.
Yeah, like Susan Collins.
There is the Senate, if we retake the Senate, get the majority.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. We need to use every single lever of power that we have to deal with the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of that's going to be an ethics oversight.
Yeah, ethics and oversight, you bet.
I'm a supporter of stacking the court. I'm also a supporter of, the Senate can write its own rules. The Senate can come up with its own ethics oversight requirements. It just chooses not to. This is important.
Yeah,
and I
super important.
If we held Supreme Court justices to the same standard that we hold other federal judges, there is a compelling case for the impeachment and removal of at least 2 sitting Supreme Court judges.
Yeah, listen to the applause. Right on. Not so much, Plattner. It's obvious that he was talking to a bunch of Democrats, and I think that had he known that was being recorded, he probably would not have said that. Which is why we need to record these politicians. We need to hold them accountable, which means both sides. That it's not just one side or the other. Like all of these politicians need to be held accountable, because given too much rope. Think about it, man. Republicans and Democrats, there are examples on both sides, and both of them need to be held accountable. I'm really not a fan of this whole, well, no cameras in here. It upsets the natives. Well, why should we allow you to say things in private that you wouldn't say in public? Because I mean, I think that just goes, and I'm not talking about, strategy or whatever. Those things I think you should meet in private with your advisors. But when you're talking to the public, there's no reason why you should get to say the real radical things that you believe, that you should pack the court and that you should impeach some Supreme Court justices and that the Senate should completely rewrite the rules for the Supreme Court. Those are pretty radical ideas. And why is it that we have, some people are under the impression, well, you shouldn't be recording that. That is baloney, my friends. If you're a politician and you're speaking in public, you need to be held. And if you're not just if you're in public, you need to be held accountable, period. And, there are so many conservatives. Well, all the conservatives that I know, I don't think that I've ever heard them say, oh, you can't record this. Yeah, no, you can't record this. Well, the reason for that is because conservatives believe in transparency. We want to know exactly who we are, who we're electing. And if you're the guy that's like Graham Plattner that's going to advocate for packing the Supreme Court in a room full of people, you have to know that that's going to get out. And it's just, I don't know. It's amazing what some of these radicals will say in private that they won't say in public. And just think about how the New York City election would have been different if all of those sound bites had come out, if people had actually done their due diligence in the primary, how that would have been different. I mean, it probably would have ended up being, he may have ended up being like the rent is too darn high guy. You remember him? Yeah, well, he was actually in a debate. But, how would things be different if everything about Zoran Mamdani was known ahead of time? He definitely wouldn't have made it through the primary. Well, Plattner is running in the Democrat primary. And so, there's a ways to go before the election. The piece ends up this way. The stop in Bucksport was not a breeze for Plattner. At one point, a sexual assault survivor confronted him over his 2013 Reddit post urging rape victims to, quote, take some responsibility for themselves. The Washington Free Beacon reported. Plattner apologized, said he penned the post when he had come out of the infantry and had a, frankly, myopic worldview on the issue, and then said he had no excuse for the post and other jokes he posted on Reddit. Included in some of those jokes are posts in which Plattner labeled white rural Mainers as racist and stupid, denigrated police as bastards, and called himself a communist. He will need to convince Mainers to overlook the post to oust Collins next November. A recent Emily's List post found that Plattner trails Collins by 19 points when voters read additional information, including quotes in his own words from his online posts. Well, a word to the wise for Mr. Plattner: the internet is forever. Well, that's a word to the wise for all politicians, that eventually all your stuff's going to come out, as it absolutely should. Now, here's a usual suspect. This is from the Washington Free Beacon, and it's entitled "George Soros Gave $250,000 to British Group Working to Censor Conservative News Sites and Kill Musk's Twitter." Now, remember, I brought you the story, I guess it was last week or the week before, how leftists in Great Britain and in Europe are trying to make their censorious laws apply to Americans and American companies. Because, of course, in Europe, there is no freedom of speech. And in America, there is. And so, for the most part, you can't be held accountable for what you say. That's not true in other countries. And there's been a lot of people that have been jailed for posts they made on Twitter and Facebook. And, it's really a totalitarian tactic. But the quote, the left-wing philanthropy funded by George Soros's Open Society Foundations bankrolls a British nonprofit that works to censor conservative news websites and social media companies, including through a plot to, quote, kill Elon Musk's X by pressuring advertisers and investors to boycott the company. Soros gave $250,000 last year to the Center for Countering Digital Hate, or CCDH, for, quote, general support. According to the Soros Charities Grant Database, the CCDH, under the guise of stopping the spread of online hate and disinformation, has pressured social media companies, investors, and advertisers to censor supposed disinformation or other content it deems to be offensive. 27 fact checkers claim that this is wrong, that sort of thing. The organization, founded by former Labor Party operative Imran Ahmed in 2018, has also pressured tech companies to pull advertisements from conservative websites, The Federalist and The Daily Wire, over alleged racist content. The grant, which has not been reported, could resurrect a long-standing battle that Musk has waged against both the CCDH and George Soros himself. Musk has accused Soros of, quote, crimes against humanity and funding groups involved in violent protests across the country this year. And he has called for the CCDH a criminal organization and said that he was going after the group's donors over its efforts to harm X's finances. Last year, they quietly organized a campaign to kill Twitter by pressuring the advertisers to cut ties. So, George Soros, he ends up being, I think, one of the shadowy figures on the left. And in Wyoming, we tend to think, oh, that kind of stuff doesn't happen here. That's not really something we have to worry about. But it's not true, my friends. There's all sorts of organizations in the Cowboy state. Let me just give you an example of one of those. The Wyoming Education Association, the teachers union. Its executive director is a guy named Ron Sniffen. Ron Sniffen is also the treasurer of the Equality State Policy Center. Now, they get a lot of their funding through labor unions that get a tremendous amount of cash from an outfit called the Center for American Progress. The Center for American Progress is the Hillary Clinton, George Soros operation. And where did they get their money? It's straight from George Soros. So you can't tell me, if you're the treasurer of a big outfit like the Wyoming Policy Center, or the Cowboy State Policy Center, whatever it's called, that you don't know where your money is coming from. They absolutely do. And, if you look at a lot of the rhetoric from the Wyoming Education Association, there's their Safe and Just Schools cadre, the little logo that they have. It's got the socialist fist on there. Gee, I wonder what that's about. And when you ask them, they're like, oh, that's just, the power of education. Yeah, we know what that fist is. It has been the symbol of just about every communist regime in the history of the world. So, yeah, we know what that is. And it's the teachers union that's using it. And, on that same, I'll dig it up for, I'll write a reminder for myself. Let's see here. Wyoming Education Association. We'll just put fist. I'll make a note to get that for you for tomorrow so I can show you what that is. But, these organizations, they do have ties inside Wyoming. And, a good rule of thumb is that anytime you hear of one of these flowery groups that have a really nice sounding name, Friends of Coal or whatever, it's just one that I made up. But anytime you hear a group that's got a real flowery sounding name to it, it's probably not so good. You can go to there's a website called Influence Watch, influencewatch.org. And it's got not every shadowy group, but pretty much all of the big ones. The Wyoming Equality is on there. The Equality State Policy, that's what it is. The Equality State Policy Center is on there. And there's a ton of information. So anytime you hear of one of these groups, by the way, Better Wyoming does not show up on there. You have to do your own research on that one. But do your own research. Find out who it is that's sending you emails or posting websites or whatever. Well, I'm sure I'm not the only one. But does anybody have any concerns about the stock market being at 48,000 or whatever it is? What about bubbles, right? Like the tech bubble, the housing bubble, the .com bubble? Anybody remember those? Well, there's a piece in The Hill entitled "The Next Recession is Coming, and this time you are the collateral." And this was posted 2 days ago, and I quote, "It's not a matter of if the next recession comes, but when." Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently warned that sections of the economy are already showing signs of strain, and that if the Federal Reserve doesn't cut rates soon, the pain could spread fast. His warning landed him an echo of what many already feel, that something in the system is starting to buckle. The numbers may still look fine, the talking heads may still smile, but the tremors have begun, and this time it will be a recession unlike any before, because the U.S. is uniquely unprepared to endure it. In previous downturns, the country had cushions. Families had savings, unions had leverage, and the government had credibility. Not really anymore. Most Americans today have little to no savings, a mountain of debt, and a growing suspicion that the system only works for someone else. Credit cards have become lifelines. This whole idea of pay now or buy now, pay later schemes are treated like budgeting tools. An unexpected bill, so like a car repair, a medical emergency, a layoff, can set off a chain reaction that ends in eviction. And the margin between comfort and crisis has all but disappeared. And if you think about, pretty much every store you go to has their own credit card. Amazon is, that's when I see ads for the most. Sign up for a credit card and this order's free. But a lot of families are using, as the article points out, using credit cards as a lifeline to fund, whatever they need, whether it be groceries or, clothes or pay taxes or bills or whatever. And Bessent's concerns center on the Federal Reserve's refusal to lower interest rates. The Fed keeps rates high to fight inflation, but that very cure could soon kill the patient. High borrowing costs are suffocating small businesses and freezing home buyers out of the market. Even modest families who once dreamed of owning a home are locked out by mortgage rates that feel like bad punchlines. Housing is stuck in limbo. Sellers can't sell, buyers can't buy, and the renters can't. All right, so there's two things going on in this piece. First, there's the Treasury Secretary's opinion that if you don't lower interest rate, which is what Donald Trump wants, that the parts of the economy are going to come crashing down. But interest rates are nowhere near as high as they were years ago. Now, we could all say that during the early to mid 1980s, things were not so hot and interest rates were above the 10% mark. All right, we still got through that. But the other side of this is that we still have a tremendous amount of money printing that has gone on. Trump printed a lot of money, Biden printed more, and all of that cash has to be sucked out of the market. And the way that you do that is with interest rates. And so it's a balancing act. When you print money, the theory is inject money into the system with this hand, get people spending, and then on the back end, you take that money out of the system with interest rates. And, okay, so we can't continue to buy houses, but this is a double-edged sword, and it's why little changes in policy and in the economy have such huge differences. And I don't ever want to say that England is, or that Europe is a harbinger of things to come, but listen to this one. We live in an interconnected world, economically interconnected to be sure. So a lot of times what happens in Europe tends to follow us over here. It's very, very similar to what happens in Wyoming. In many cases, Wyoming is behind the rest of the country. So, what happens in the eastern United States sometimes takes a couple of months to hit Wyoming. But listen to this piece from the Daily Caller. UK to announce a milkshake tax as the budget crisis deepens. No, they couldn't stop doing all of their stupid green energy stuff. No. We're going to tax milkshakes. This is insane. Reeves scrapped plans Friday to raise the income tax rates after updated forecasts showed that public finances were $10 billion, approximately $12.5 billion, stronger than expected. Just days later, the Chancellor, who serves as the UK's chief finance minister overseeing tax and spending, shifted focus to ending the tax exemption for sugary milk-based drinks. They have a tax exemption for that. Reeves brings the milk-based beverages under the soft drinks industry levy and lowered the tax threshold from from 5 grams to 4 grams of sugar per 100 milliliters, a shift expected to take effect in April of 2027 and generate between 50 million and 100 million pounds, approximately 62 million and 125 million dollars. According to the current Treasury forecast, the government has shifted to smaller tax measures after dropping the proposed income tax rise. So wait a minute. You're having a problem with your budget. And the way that you're going to solve it is by taxing milkshakes. Maybe you should take a broader look at what you're doing financially and, I don't know, stop all of the crazy green energy. Maybe go back to things like coal and oil and stop spending money on solar panels and raising the electricity rates for everybody. No. They're focusing on milkshakes. Now, if you want an example of where this is going to happen, is probably in New York City. Don't forget, it was Andrew Cuomo who had the big gulp ban that you couldn't sell, soft drinks bigger than a certain size, and he was looking out for your health. Well, this is looking out for their own health, but in Great Britain, maybe in the UK, maybe they should look at some other tax measures. Absolutely ridiculous, my friends. Well, that pretty much does it for another busy broadcast, 2 hours on the program. Make sure that you don't miss the podcast, which will be published probably 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. It's always around midday on Wednesdays. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.